Universal health care. I'm fond of saying to healthcare advocates, if you want to see universal health care in your lifetime, never use that term again in public. Why? It is an abstraction. Think about it for a second. There are people in this room who will feel an emotion when they hear universal health care. That's because we're activists. For everybody else in the United States, what the associations are: big impersonal clinics, socialized medicine, which has been well branded by the other side and by corporate dollars. The idea that you're going to be separated from your doctor, that's what universal health care means to the average person. That's not the term that wins. And I can tell you sitting in focus groups, we can win on this issue 9 to 1, 7 to 2 on this issue using different language. And then we say at the end, so are you for universal health care? 9-0 against us. And I'll show you in a very, very short second. I'll skip over reproductive health other than to say that when the other side is saying baby killer, you've got to have something a little stronger than reproductive health. So I'm going to show you 3 or 4 messages that we've just tested on, and I'm just going to show you what these are is their principled stand. They're paragraph-length messages that have essentially a tagline that we hope will be branded over time as people start to use them over and over and over that capture the essence of the narrative. But these are narratives, essentially. And this is the beauty of what the conservatives did was that when Ronald Reagan would say things like the liberals have never seen a tax they didn't want to raise, and they never saw a government program they didn't want to fund. That stuff stuck. And it stuck because there's a whole narrative about the decline of the welfare state and how the New Deal had gotten corrupted, et cetera, et cetera. That was all in there in people's minds, and these things became stand-ins for it. So I'm not going to read through these whole things. I will show you the taglines, and you can read below if you want. It's on your little flash drive. Taking back the role of government. This is one. Democrats are terrified of using the word government. They should be. What we find, by the way, is that if you simply substitute the word leader or leadership or true leaders every time you want to say government, if you watch on online hand dials, you'll see the dials go up like this. If you use the word government, it goes down like this. What we've got to start doing is intermixing those those phrases. Here's a message that wins by double digits over a strong conservative message in national polls. It's time politicians stopped running for or against government and started running it well. And then it goes on to say we need leaders who understand the value of business because business is the engine of prosperity and jobs, but we also need leaders who understand what happens when you let business call all the shots. That language of calling all the shots as opposed to, or writing their own rules as opposed to regulations evokes something very different than red tape, and that's what you want to evoke. On taking back health care, start with, I believe in a family doctor for every family. It has a completely different meaning to people than universal health care. This is some work that Celinda Lake and I did that for Families USA and the Herndon Alliance that we can get to you as well. Taking back Roe. This is one of the only messages that we actually tested that worked with the word choice in it, because choice is actually not the strongest way to frame this issue. For one reason is that when the other side is saying baby killers, and you're saying, but I'd like the choice to kill babies, that doesn't do terribly well. But the other is when you say a woman's right to choose, you've just disenfranchised 50% of the population. You then think, well, I think I ought to sit and decide this issue. I think you shouldn't have that right. All you have to do is enfranchise that 50% by stop talking about a woman's right to choose and say things like this. I don't believe the government should be telling a woman or a couple when they should or shouldn't start their family. I can tell you that wins in the state of Georgia. Just to give you a quick example, then I will wrap up. Here's one of the language of choice that worked. Freedom and responsibility go hand in hand. That's why I'm both pro-choice and pro-personal responsibility. When you pair those two things, we have seeded on the left all these wonderful traditional American values like freedom and personal responsibility that all of us believe in and teach our kids. We've seeded them to the right, build them into progressive narratives. And finally, the last one to finish up Alex's presentation, taking back national security. This is not the strongest message that we tested, but this wins nationally by almost double digits. And it begins, if we detain people without hearings, wiretap our own citizens, and torture people on mere suspicions, the terrorists have won because we've given up everything our country has stood for. America is the only nation ever founded on an idea, the idea of freedom. We've always led by our right as well as by our might. I will not continue, but simply to tell you that message gets through to Americans. If you talk about civil liberties or the Geneva Conventions, that message does not get through. Thank you very much.